Ourlads Football Network is back on the air, and we have a full show for you today with Dan Shonka scouting the country and Jamal Murphy on fantasy. In college football, USC survives a thriller over Texas as the Longhorns might have found a new star receiver in 6'6" Colin Johnson. Dan Mullen provides another big win under his resume and proves why he's one of the top underrated coaches in the country. And will please someone remind me again why Lamar Jackson deserved the Heisman. In the NFL, Dan will go into Deshaun Watson's first start and why Darren Lee is struggling in New York. And do the Cowboys still have the best offensive line in the league? We'll discuss these topics and much more as the OFN on PSN starts now. All right, so week 2 is in the books. We have a ton of players to analyze in the first segment and then some fantasy biz to attend to at 4:30. So let's get right to it as I welcome back my first guest, Ourlads GM and National Scout Dan Shonka. So Dan, as I said in the open, exactly why did Lamar Jackson win the Heisman?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I know he's a very talented athlete. Mm-hmm. He's very productive early, but,
yes, he is.
Hey, the guy didn't do anything with the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. And then, he had that big game early this year, and then when he got against a real team like Clemson, they put the clamps on him. So, no, I'm not sure. I cannot confirm why he got that Heisman.
Yeah, it's an award. I've said this a few times since he won it. That is just I grew up thinking it used to be an award like the Doug Flutie or the Charles Woodson. I always thought it was an award where you had to do something special at a big moment. You couldn't just be a statistical guy, putting up big numbers. Right. And sure, I agree. I mean, he's a great athlete, very good college player. There's no question about it. But when you constantly go up in the big games and you can't get your team over the hump, when your team's a pretty good team, it's not like he's taking Utah State, into Clemson. I mean, he's got some players around him, and can you just play well in those big games? Can you get when you're inside the red zone against Clemson last year? Can you get the team in the end zone? And when you're in the bowl game against LSU, can you not have one of your worst games? So to me, that's a problem, but that's the award. But what a huge win for Clemson. We talked about it last week. When you get offense versus defense, it does seem that the defense usually comes out ahead.
Yeah, it just, that's the way. In fact, Clemson has just been, they realistically could be, their defense is right up there with Alabama's the last few years. And this year it's almost suffocating, and they lost quite a few people even off of last year's defense. So, but it's the young guys. I tell you, you got to hand it to Dabo Swinney. He's done just a tremendous job of building that program since he got the head job there. And hey, they take some of the fringe guys too, out there in regards to maybe character, but they fit into exactly what they're supposed to do there. And, they've kind of weeded most of them out, but, they'll still take a few that are sketchy, I guess you'd say, but other, they do have a tremendous, things that they want to do. They go after the people that will fit in there perfectly.
Yeah. And you take a look at their schedule. They have a really big game coming up next week. When we do the show next week, we'll be talking about that big game in Blacksburg at Virginia Tech. And you also have to play Florida State. That'll be at home, though, and maybe a freshman quarterback, which against this Clemson defense could be trouble for Florida State. And then that South Carolina game on the road may not be such an easy game as it used to be. Even though, of course, last year, even actually it was 2015 that the game was close, but pretty much they have dominated that South Carolina series for a while, at least for the last several years, including last year when they beat them 56-7. The other big game, of course, was USC and Texas, and we didn't think it was going to be a big game. Because of the way Texas opened up against Maryland. Of course, people got way over. I mean, the overreaction as far as Tom Herman was so ridiculous. And that's, I think, from a lot of people who just don't really know college football. Right. Who's this guy, this assistant coach from Houston? Oh, look at Texas. They're going to be bad. They might as well get rid of this guy. But we know how good Tom Herman is, and he proved it once again. They don't have the talent of USC, and they hung in that game, and they really did it because of that defensive line that front seven was so dominant. And you know what? It reminded me of watching USC and Alabama the first game of the season last week. It was like they just dominated USC at the line of scrimmage. And on the other side, even though Texas had a freshman quarterback, that guy Erlinger, the true freshman, who I didn't expect him to do much at all, but he, part of the reason that he was able to succeed is because that kid Colin Johnson, as I referenced, a 6'6", 4-star prospect out of high school who didn't really play much last year, became a star in one game.
Well, that's what you always look at when a new coach comes in, because for whatever reason, sometimes, a position coach has got a burr in the saddle about a guy, or, and then you get a breath of fresh air like Tom Herman comes in. I mean, Tom Herman, like I said, I was just LOL, when they're crucifying him, because I saw what he did at Iowa State as an offensive coordinator. They won 8 games when he was there. Then the minute he left, they went back down to won 2 games,
Yeah.
And then he goes to Ohio State, wins a national championship. And believe me, it's that scheme, and we can see it now, what's going on, how they struggle without him the last 2 years, And no, he'll get that going. And then Colin Johnson had got his opportunity to get in there and play, and we're going to see more guys emerge, throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, but because their strength is still going to be their defense, it looks like, for this particular season, until they do get that offense going, and the quarterback winds up maybe getting a little bit more experience. But I mean, Todd Orlando is looking like he, off to a good start already, even though, most of these guys came from Charlie Strong. But it looks like Chris Boyd, they got some size in the secondary too. This Chris Boyd kid looks like a pretty good corner. Jefferson is a very talented player, but he's had his ups and downs over the last couple of years. Is there anyone, like one particular player that you think is the most, is the guy that has the highest ceiling on their team on defense?
Not defensively. I think that it's going to be a type of thing where we're going to see some guys stick out about every week as they get better. But, I think that
too early.
They stepped it up. They got Charlie Strong, I think, did generally a pretty good job recruiting there. So it's not like the cupboard's going to be bare. These kids just got to be coached.
Yep. All right. And as I mentioned also at the Open, Dan Mullen, I actually mentioned him because I'm already looking for a new coach for the Jets. So I already mentioned if the Jets, I'd rather have a head coach in college than an assistant coach, first-time head coach in the NFL, because the Jets have done that pony like too many times in the last several years, and it just hasn't worked. And the one guy that I mentioned, I says, look, if you're going to go to college and get a head coach, I want to talk to Dan Mullen. Because I think Dan Mullen, I think this is going to be the year. I really do. I think this is going to be the year that people that his name starts being moved closer to the top of potential job opportunities. Now, I don't know if he can leave Mississippi State. I don't know if he will leave Mississippi State. Of course, there are better jobs out there. We know that. But everybody's different. But he seems like, his stock is definitely rising. And look at what he did for Dak Prescott, and look what he's doing with Fitzgerald. Arius Williams looks like a very good back, in the backfield. They lost some key players, Ross and company. So nobody expected Mississippi State to be relevant this year, but that's what Dan Mullen does best. He always winds up coaching up this program.
He does. I've long been impressed with him, and I'm not sure, but when that Florida job came open a couple of years ago, I think he was interviewed for it.
Yeah, there was talk about that, but nothing happened. So maybe he wants to stay there at Starkville. Do you think that's possible?
They gave him, well, sometimes, loyalty's got to work both ways, and, he has a losing season, and he might be out of there, they might can him in a minute, so, you just he's going to have to look at, but you're right. He's definitely going to be in the mix, and his name's going to be bandied around a lot because, when you put it on LSU like they did the other day, 30-point win. First of all, Ed Ogeron is probably catching a lot of heat now. And then he had his chance. What Ed is, though, Ed's a great position coach and a great recruiter.
Yep.
And good leadership quality stuff, but the bottom fell out of the elevator on that one, and I think that if in Mullen, of course, hey, who had the best quarterback?
That's true.
It's Fitzgerald.
How long is LSU? I mean, what are they doing at quarterback? At LSU and Florida, two of the best schools in the SEC, can't find quarterbacks.
I know it's amazing because, hey, if I was a quarterback, those two schools would definitely be on my list.
Yeah.
There's no question. And I'll tell you, Louisiana and Florida, for that matter, Florida doesn't have as many great high school quarterbacks. They do have some, but Louisiana kicks out, quarterbacks like, it's unbelievable how many, pro quarterbacks and, great quarterbacks they have in that state in the prep ranks and things. And you tell me LSU can't. I mean, hey, if you can't evaluate, that's your problem. I mean, here's Dak Prescott. He's a Louisiana guy, and they were recruiting him first as a defensive back. So,
wow.
Maybe there's real holes in their recruiting too. They just miss these guys and they go elsewhere, or they went into Texas. So the Texas is right by them state-wise, and Texas is loaded with quarterbacks. Look at them. Hey, Stafford went all the way over to Georgia. He's a Texas kid, and although there's Texas quarterbacks all over everywhere, if you can't get one to stick at those two schools, then man, something's wrong.
And as you were saying with coaches, it only takes one bad season. It's sort of like what's going on with Kevin Sumlin at Texas A&M. I mean, look, I think sometimes coaches do have to say to themselves, maybe I should leave before anything goes wrong, because I still think Kevin Sumlin's a very good coach. Something is just not going right there. I don't know what it is. I think he has a good staff, but sometimes it's just time to leave. And sometimes you don't leave early enough, and when you don't, then your reputation takes a hit. And instead of getting a better job that you deserve, you wind up taking a backwards job.
Well, Texas A&M's got a lot of money there, and I'm sure that, when he had those seasons with Johnny Manziel and he did get some offers elsewhere, and
yeah,
I tell you what, they got short leashes there at A&M. I mean, they got real short leashes, so because they don't care, they'll pay off his contract and bring in another coach. I mean, they got powerful alumni there, so sometimes you just got to look out for yourself. And I was always one that was loyal to wherever I was at, but I saw a lot of other guys that, man, they're looking for the next job the minute they got that one.
Mike Riley, is he the right coach for Nebraska?
Well, I tell you, what the thing is, he was such a contrast to Bo Pelini. Bo was just hot-headed, and his face always looked like it was on fire, and his steam coming out of his ears. And Mike is just the opposite, laid-back guy, and he actually turned down the Alabama job a while back, and he's easy rider, I guess. But he ended up firing his longtime defensive coordinator a year ago, and that was with him, at Oregon State and different places he's coached, and so. But there's no excuse. This has been really embarrassing the last 2 weeks. And I like Mike personally. Mike is a really good guy. He's a good recruiter. He's an honest person. And all those things they like at Nebraska. But one thing they like better than anything is somebody to win. And, really, Arkansas State, come on. You're Nebraska. You know what I mean?
And even Northern Illinois, they have no offense. Nothing. They had 2 pick sixes for scores.
Yeah.
You can't lose like that. That's a problem. I mean, they need to, don't you think they need to bring in a coach? And some schools need to just go back to where they were their best. They need to bring back a coach and run the crap out of the football. Do what they used to do. Recruit, with the offensive lines, those big boys they have in Nebraska, and just pound the hell out of you like Wisconsin. That's what they should do. But
they tried to change things, and actually Bill Callahan, they brought in Ndamukong Suh, and they had great recruiting here. But the problem is his defensive coordinator was on the shelf, was a good friend of Bill, and ended up costing him his job. And because Bill's a great football coach and clearly one of the best offensive line coaches in the National Football League, and they're just stuff that unfortunately happened there. And there he was in that transition where they didn't have a lot of good players, but then they brought him in, and then, of course, Bo Pelini took advantage of it. Yeah. He had all those good players to get his season, and then he just keeps flying off the handle, and they just finally – it was really disgusting to see him because he's a very good coach, but he just I mean, he just loses it way too much, for national audience. Nebraska people are just tired of it.
Yeah, that Indomitian Sioux defense that year with Pelini was one of the best college defenses I had ever seen. It was just
Yep.
dominating, but they didn't have enough balance. Okay, now Oklahoma State TCU is a big game, and TCU is off to a good start, but Oklahoma State's better, and they're at home. And Mason Rudolph, I know you were the first one to kind of let me know last year to keep an eye on him. I wasn't sure whether or not, because we talked about Baker Mayfield and guys' products of their system, and so I wasn't really sure myself what was Mason Rudolph. But boy, Mason Rudolph just really looks good right now. And where do you think you might have him? Because I know you're working on your early 2018 booklet for the draft. So is how high is he? Because he is a senior. So
Right.
Where would you put him? And how do you match him up with the Baker Mayfield? They're both seniors.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Right now, we got Baker Mayfield is going to be our top senior quarterback. He just, I mean, I don't want to have flashbacks to Johnny Manziel, that stuff off the field, because Mayfield's already had that, and but his mobility and his accuracy and his arm strength is just, again though, I'll be interested to see what he measures out verified wise.
Yeah.
I mean, they listed at 6'1", 220, and he's probably 220. I don't know that he's 6 foot, but I'll tell you what, he is special. I mean, he sees the field really well. And then, we have, we have guys, we like Mason Rudolph. We got him. He'll be our second quarterback in there.
For the seniors.
Yeah, of the seniors. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, of the seniors.
And his advantage is his size, right? Obviously, is his size advantage over Mayfield.
Yep, and he's got a lot of talent, and like I said, maybe he'll end up being a career backup kind of guy. I don't know, but then see Luke Falk out at Washington State, he's going to be in the mix too. But again, he's from the air raid system that if Mahomes doesn't do it, break that mold, then nobody's going to. But Falk is in that system, and he throws the ball out and knows what to do, but he'll be a developmental senior. But those are our top three seniors.
And it's Mayfield then, because he kind of, with his size and his accuracy, he's kind of, is he like, maybe, could he be like a Drew Brees?
Could be. I tell you, he is a super athletic guy. One thing about Drew Brees, in fact, I scouted him when he was at Purdue, and he was always very focused, and that's the thing that just bothers me about Mayfield is he got laser focus on football. Taking the flag and sticking it in the middle of the Ohio State Buckeyes, after the game. What the hell are you thinking about that for?
Yeah,
I know you're excited about winning. Get your behind in the locker room,
Sure.
And then crap off the feet. I mean, talent-wise. Now, what we do, we write these guys talent-wise up, and then now, hey, it's up to the team. If you don't want the guy, then take him off your board. But this is where this guy is,
Sure.
And so anyway, that's the top three seniors.
All right. Good segue. Speaking of Purdue, doesn't this just prove once again how important coaches are in football? Because Western Kentucky can't beat anybody right now. And Purdue can't lose. They almost beat Louisville. And we were wondering, well, there were some weird things that happened in a game. Maybe that was just an opening game thing. But they beat two teams that are okay, but teams they might have lost to in the last few years. So Jeff Brom's got something going there. What about, and with the way Michigan hasn't been out of the gates offensively, and being at Purdue, that game might be pretty close. I wouldn't be surprised.
It'd be interesting. Now they did lose their receiver. Black is the speed guy, number 7. He's out for the year, broke his foot. But they got other freshman receivers and junior receivers, and Perry is back in there, and Mac McDoom, and they've got a bunch of those guys that. Their biggest problem is Spate. He's so inconsistent.
Yep.
That's scary.
That's
he
right.
Hit a bull in the behind with a handful of peas. You know what I mean? And you just don't know where it's going. But their line's coming along. You know, Mason Cole got put out to left tackle now, and Kugler is the center, and they're running back. You know, they got those two big hammers at fullback. Got some excellent tailbacks in there. Isaac's doing a great job.
Yeah, he is.
You know,
yeah,
power guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he's running a lot better. He was an underachiever for the first few years of his career, but he's playing a lot better this year.
Yeah, he's really coming on nice, and you know, so they got a good change up. Evans is number 12. He's the speed guy. You know, and then the defense, which they lost 10 guys off that. You know, but they got some of those defensive linemen back. I mean, Gary is going to be the first pick in the draft probably next year. You know, I mean, he is just a beast at defensive end. I mean, I had no idea. I didn't realize he was that big when he was a freshman coming in a year ago.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, he's close to he's 6'3" and a half and about 280. And he just, he ran 4.5 something, you know, I mean, he's just, and then he makes plays all over. Last year, people couldn't block him. And then this year it's tough on him. But then Hurst is having a really good year again, defensive tackle. So
what about Winovich? I know we've never talked about Winovich, but he makes a lot of plays. Winovich.
He does. Number 15. Love him. I mean, he does. He's just not a big guy. He's got to play Sam linebacker on the next level.
Okay.
You know, but I tell you what, then they got all those young linebackers in there that are really good.
Yeah, I like Hudson.
And,
Hudson, I like.
And yep.
Yeah.
I mean, they got some really good ones in there. So.
Yep.
But anyway, I think it'd be tough on Purdue because right now Purdue's probably got one pro prospect, their linebacker Watson, on the inside.
Okay.
But I think it'd be tough. But you know what? Hey, you know they like you said, Jeff Brom. You know, he'll scheme them at least maybe being in the game to the end.
Yeah, and if Spate has a couple of turnovers, it is their first true road game of the year. Anything is possible. And quickly, then we'll get to the NFL. Penn State, Iowa in your backyard. So that's obviously going to be a huge game. Actually, a little bit surprised, even though I have Penn State as my national championship pick. I'm a little bit surprised they're almost a 13-point favorite. I mean, didn't anybody learn from Michigan going to Iowa last year at night? I mean, this is not an easy place to play. We've talked about how Iowa is looking pretty good to start the season. And Penn State doesn't blow out a lot of teams. That's just the way they are. They can win games. Of course, they win a lot of games. They have the last year and a half. But this game is going to be a good game. I don't see how Penn State covers that game unless it's a late cover.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Penn State last year though they hammered Iowa, I was shocked. To what they did to Iowa last year. They really took Iowa apart, and you're right. It's usually close, and then Iowa usually beats Penn State. So last year's was an aberration, I think, and it should be a great game. Iowa's got a rotation of 3 running backs now. Butler's going to be out. He had just a gruesome elbow injury the other day, but I think he's going to be out for about 3 weeks. But they got a couple of young guys that will do a nice job. Wadley, I really like him, but he's a third down kind of back, and his durability is, he's only 190 pounds, and he's going to get beat up. I mean, he just is. But I tell you what, when he's got the ball in his hands, he makes stuff happen, makes people miss in space, but then they got some hammers that they can bring in, a couple 220-pound freshmen that are pretty darn good. So, and then they got their tight end Fant, who's really good. Their offensive line's all good. Their offense, they've had a receiver Easley that's come on, and then their defense is really good. Josie Jewell in the middle. So and they're developing their secondary a little bit more right now, the corners and things. But the thing is, they got to stop. I call him Sasquatch Barkley because he crushes people, and he's the man. Like I said, you got to stop him. If you don't stop him, it doesn't matter what everything else happens.
Yeah, so that should be a really fun game to watch. NFL, Deshaun Watson, first start. So what did you think? Hey, a win. That's what you need to do. You went on the road. NFL, first start, got to win. Even though whatever the variables are, it doesn't matter. It wins a win, and Houston really needed it. So start of a good career as long as you can stay healthy.
Right, absolutely. And I think what it did is it gave an uplift to the whole team. bring him in because they saw him play. They saw him win a national championship.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, those guys, they're sitting in a hotel on Saturday.
Yeah.
You know, they're looking at those college games. They know what Watson can do, and he goes in there, and they've been around him. So, yeah, Watson, you know, like I said, it's baby steps, but, hey, he's a playmaker.
How surprised are you that Chris Carson is off to a good start in Seattle? A guy that I'm sure you probably didn't think would get drafted, and barely got drafted. They don't even have an offensive line in Seattle, but that's part of the reason why they're going to Carson, because they're a lot quicker than Thomas Rawls and healthier. But still, no Lacey, no Rawls. They're going to the quicker guy, Carson, and it seems to be working out.
Yeah, no, that's you know, the thing is, it drives you crazy when guys look mediocre or just average at best in college, and then they can do something in the NFL. So I don't know if that means the NFL's not as good as everybody thinks it is or what. But, you know, Carson, I mean, I saw him look disastrous in college at times. And, you know, they gave it to him on the goal line, and he scored in and things like that in college. But, you know, so hey, more power to him, and he'll be in there until he gets wounded.
What do you think about the Cowboys' offensive line? I know that you know, this offensive line, the reputation lasts always longer than it should, and there's no way the Cowboys right now, as of today, have the best offensive line in football. Part of that is, I mean, La'el Collins has not really taken that step that they want him to, and once again, too much Chaz Green. So you have both of those guys on the line. They can't. That's not the best offensive line in football. I mean, I know they got two other really good players, but you can't have a couple of really good ones and a couple of bad ones and be the best offensive line in football. It's a good one, but those guys have got to get better, especially Collins, because I know what you think about Green.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I tell you what, they got three good offensive linemen. Obviously, Swanson at center.
Yeah, three of them. Yeah.
You know, Martin at guard,
yep.
and then Smith. Mm-hmm. You know, at tackle, and Smith seems to, you know, and he has his ups and downs. He used to be so consistent early, and you know, he has his. You know, I'm wondering, you know, he doesn't compete every play like he should at times either. And I think, you know, the thing is, the overall deal is, you know, the Cowboys put up with too much crap on their team, and instead of having a tight ship, you know, there's listing going on all the time, and I think then it rubs the good guys the bad way, and then they drop off, you know, because they're, instead of thinking about just doing their job, they're thinking about the distractions that are on the team, and then so it's all a big mess, you know, what Elliott did, and then what Jerry does to you know, put his 2 cents worth in to think he's got to run everything. So, you know, it hurts the whole team. But they got three offensive line, hey, Collins is a guard, and I don't think he's going to make that transition. Hey, they're going to suffer out there at him at tackle, I'll tell you right now. And I know darn well they're going to suffer with Green at guard.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to do is yesterday on the Jet Show, I talked about the problems going on with Darren Lee, because we just can't figure out what's going on there. And I wanted to play this bite from the show yesterday. Report from Dan Shonka. I wanted to go back to his scouting report on Darren Lee, because I had to think about it for a second, and I go, wait a second. I'm saying to myself, Darren Lee is an inside linebacker. Why is he an inside linebacker? And I looked at the draft guide, and it goes, and he's got him under outside linebacker. I go, I remember that. I'm gonna say, what is he doing inside when the guy's like spare? I mean, the kid's a puny guy. So if you look at his scouting report, he can cover inside pass catchers. Okay, that's what he does well. And what does Bowles do? He has Davis, who basically is a one-dimensional run-stuffing linebacker covering running backs. Then his scouting report on Lee tends to struggle in the box. Where does Bowles play him? In the box. And then finally, elite athlete, and take a look at his stats at college. 2 years at Ohio State, and you want to know why he was drafted as high as he was? Because in just 2 years, he had 147 tackles, 27.5 for loss, and 3 defensive touchdowns, and that's in the Big Ten. Where is that guy right now? That's why when you were talking about where's Mo Wilkerson, where's Leonard Williams, I don't think it's Mo Wilkerson. I don't think it's Leonard Williams. I don't think it's Darren Lee. It's Todd Bowles. He doesn't know what he's doing. So what's going on with Darren Lee, Dan?
well, like I said, he's played out of position, but I know why they got him inside, because that was kind of the trend. What they're doing, so they can cover, say, for instance, tight ends run down the middle of the field with them.
Sure.
Things like that. Cover, well.
Which he's not doing.
He's not doing, he's having problems, and they had a great defense there. I mean, and then you let, and I don't care what everybody says about, Sheldon, who went out there.
Sheldon Richardson.
I tell you what, he was he was, they had a dominant defensive team, and I know, you don't have money for everybody, but it's how you, it's how you approach things and work things out and all that. And, I know Richardson was, like I said, I know he's a pain in the butt, at times and stuff, but hey, a lot of great players are pain in the asses, but they still end up playing big time on Sunday. So
you still think Darren Lee, if he has the right coaching, if he's in the right system, if he's being coached properly, still has what it takes to be a good pro, because we're just not seeing anything. He's not doing anything. He's a disaster right now.
Yeah, well, obviously you got to put him in the right scheme and then the right, the right packages, and I think they force fed him in there before he's ready, and then you create bad habits.
Okay, so still a player that you wouldn't give up on?
No.
Okay, all right, Dan. So when's that the booklet coming out?
Yeah, the draft preview, the 2018 draft preview is going to print Monday, so it'll be out at the end of next week.
Okay, so when we talk next Wednesday, we'll highlight that for sure. Dan, I appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks a million, Greg. So long now.
Okay, that's Dan Shonka, and again, he's with us every Wednesday. We would have had a little bit more time with him today. Usually we have about 45 minutes, but Dan's got to run, so we'll catch up on some of the players that we did not get a chance to talk to him about today. All right, so let's turn our attention to fantasy football. We usually have our OFN fantasy show on Mondays, but I wasn't feeling good. Jan Levine wasn't feeling good, so we decided to pass on that. And, Jan Levine wasn't feeling good for the Jet Show. And my next guest, who also does the Jet Show and the fantasy show, and we have our OFN show on Mondays, and Jamal comes on and talks fantasy. So we kind of rearranged everything, did the Jet Show yesterday, and we also booked Jamal for this show today. So, Jamal, I was glad I got you on just before I played the Jet Show soundbite about Darren Lee.
Yeah, that was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
Hopefully Lee, hopefully he does fulfill some promise. We need it.
Yeah, it's a sad situation. You're lucky that you didn't have an opportunity to appear on that show yesterday, because there's a lot of venting going on.
I didn't mind missing that one. To tell you the truth.
That level of venting didn't really stop very much for about a half hour. So it just went on and on and on. So anyway. Hey, you know what? Let's talk about somebody that actually is doing something, and I know is being picked up in leagues because I picked them up, and that's Jermaine Kearse.
Right.
Kearse, if you don't have, we know, and we'll talk more about this on the fantasy show on Friday morning when we have talked about I have more running backs than receivers. So if you're looking for a receiver, why not Kearse? And I don't really know if it's going to matter or not. If McCown's there, maybe it will, maybe it won't. All depends on eventually when Petty plays, how good he plays. But if Petty plays better than McCown, which is entirely possible, then why wouldn't he also go to Kearse? So Kearse is clearly the number one guy there.
Oh yeah, clearly, and that doesn't say much for the Jets, but fantasy wise, that's the case. And then he had a touchdown reception against Oakland last week, and a nice one at that. He grabbed it, contested. He looks good. He's been a good role model, I guess, for the younger Jets receivers.
All right, so I was just talking to Dan about Chris Carson, and he played really well in the preseason. So that was something where you wondered, is that just preseason? They have Lacy, they have Rawls, even though Rawls and Lacy have been banged up in their career. So you can kind of think, maybe. And same thing with Procise. Procise was banged up, didn't play much last year. So the door was open. And Carson has taken advantage of it, and I'm sure he's no longer in any league on the waiver wire. He's got to be on every team now.
Yeah, definitely. After today, when waiver wires are complete, he should. There's no way he's there. because running back is such, it's such a valuable commodity. I mean, anybody who's getting about 10, 15 carries at least is on somebody's team at this point. And it doesn't matter how big the league is, 10, 12, 14, 16 teams in the league, running backs are a premium. And Carson, he did something with those carries. He had a good game. Obviously a lot better than your boy, Lacey, who you love so much.
So stop with the Lacey. He's only kidding. It's a joke.
Right. Well, I heard, there's some Lacey news out there where he was venting to the public, I guess, about his issues, I guess his weight issues.
Oh, he was.
But anyway, but
Okay.
back to Carson. I mean, he's filled the role, and like you said, he stepped in. You do have to worry a little bit. There are so many other guys involved in that rotation or potential rotation that you kind of have to keep playing well every week to really be a sure bet for the following week.
Yeah, and that offensive line is also so bad. It's one of those situations that you probably start him based on competition, right? You wouldn't at this point think, okay, he's just starting every week. It all depends on who else you have on your depth chart, and right. And then also who the competition is, because that Seattle offensive line and that offense has just done nothing.
No, you're right. I mean, that's a major concern. I mean, I guess in some ways it helps the running back position because Russell Wilson hasn't been able to get much done. The receivers haven't done anything. So I guess if there's anything going on that offensive side of the ball, I guess it's the running back.
Yeah, you think Seattle misses Curse?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, right.
They just look like they need all the help they can get.
But hey, they got Sheldon Richardson, so
defensively they're fine.
Yeah. So that's what it gets the give and take. I think they need an offensive lineman, though. They got to stop making trades for anything else other than offensive lineman. What do you think as far as last week? Which player stood out for you that was a little surprising?
Oh, there were a couple. I mean, most surprising has to be Trevor Siemian, Denver quarterback.
Nobody started him.
Nobody started him, and nobody should have started him. I mean, but actually, it's the second game in a row where he's actually done something. And I was down on him. There was no way I thought he was going to be a solid quarterback this year, and he's been. I think he's like top 5 in quarterback rating at this point. I mean, it's only 2 games, I know, but I mean, it is surprising. I mean, last week 231 yards, 4 TDs. Never thought I'd see that. So that's a lot of points. I think he was the second highest scoring quarterback behind Tom Brady last week. So if you were the genius who started him, props to you.
Yeah, but right now, still in if you're talking about 12-team league, he's not a starter, is he?
Maybe. I mean,
competition.
Definitely not a consistent starter. He's not a guy that you have in there every week, or you show that much confidence in. But if there's a bind, you have a guy who hasn't been performing, or a little dinged up injury wise. It's not a bad play. They play Buffalo. Oh wait, yeah, I think they play Buffalo this week at Buffalo. So Buffalo's a solid defense, or at least they seemed like it. But maybe you ride the Siemian wave. I don't know. I can't be mad at you if you try it.
Which receiver? Because we know which running back has made all the news. But which receiver out there has gotten off to a really good start so far this season that may not have been a top, early round guy?
Well, just going off last week, Michael Crabtree went off. I mean, he's been known to do that. He's a top wide receiver in the league, but most people consider him second on the team to Amari Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And Crabtree, had 6 catches, 80 yards, 3 touchdowns against the Jets. Okay, fine, but they made it look pretty easy out there, Carter to Crabtree. So if you had Crabtree on your team last week, you probably ended up with a victory.
Okay. And as far as this upcoming week, are there any specific? I know it's kind of midweek, even though one of the games gets started tomorrow night that nobody will be watching. But is there a player? I know we'll be talking more about this on Friday, like a fringe player, somebody that we talk about every week. I know you'll have your fringe report that comes out before the weekend that we post up at Ourlads, and it talks about some of the players that sort of like a Trevor Siemian type that may or may not start. He played pretty well, maybe shown flashes, and you know what? I'm buying in. I think you should go ahead and start this guy. I believe it's not just a 1 week thing.
Well, I mean, one guy who really comes out of nowhere and is based on an injury is Ed Dixon for Carolina. I mean, Greg Olson is out with a broken foot. Dixon hasn't done anything in years, probably. I mean, he's been like a 15 catch guy per season, something like that. But when he was in Baltimore, we saw he had some skills. And I think that Cam Newton's going to put him to use right away. Cam Newton's been struggling. He's probably overly dependent on the tight end position right now because he hasn't been accurate, further down the field to wide receivers. I think he puts Dixon to use right away, and if Dixon, still has any kind of skills left, he might be able to benefit from that. Another guy who I like is Duke Johnson for Cleveland. Cleveland been pretty inept as far as offensively, in general. He hasn't really done much in the running game, but he's their third leading receiver. They lost Coleman to an injury, so his role in that receiving game probably increases a little bit. So that's another fringe guy I think you should look at.
Yeah, I mean, Crowell had a really good year last year. And
right.
Nobody was. I mean, he's a talented back. Nobody was really sure about whether or not he would have that kind of a season. But when the new coaching staff took over, that was something that that was something that they talked about was, you know what, maybe these two guys are a little bit better than people think, and I'm going to use them. We're going to use them in this scheme, and Crowell had a big season. But we kind of knew how talented Duke Johnson was because he's a threat both running and catching. But it's kind of tough when you have, because Crowell's basically he is your feature back. Duke Johnson is more of your your backup third down back. So is it more of sort of like what we talked about with Chicago and their situation where they don't really have a big downfield passing game, and with Cleveland it's more of because of the rookie, and now with Coleman's injury that's going to hurt him a little bit more. But is that what it is? It's more of, okay, young quarterback, maybe he'll rely, or the offense will rely more on not just one running back but two?
Yeah, that's totally it. Just like you said, the Chicago situation with Tariq Cohen. If you have a dynamic back who, third down back, and you have an inexperienced quarterback, he's probably going to rely on those short passes and get that running back involved in the passing game. So yeah, and it's also, as far as fantasy goes, it's dependent on, he's obviously more valuable in PPR leagues. He's not going to get the touches that Crowell gets. So he's dependent on those short passes that in PPR leagues count for points. So yeah, no, it's totally that. And like you said, Cleveland quarterback situation shaky. Relying on Kaiser if he plays. Hopefully he's over that migraine. I'm sure he is. But he not so experienced, not so great at reading defenses at this point in his career. It's easy to check down to those running backs.
And what about one last player? What about Higgins? Higgins, very talented receiver at Colorado State in college. But that sometimes it doesn't translate in the NFL. You never know what it is. And last year, nothing. But now with Coleman down and Britt not playing well, could Higgins actually be maybe the number one guy?
I mean, it's possible, right? I mean, that's the thing with the NFL. It's crazy. I mean, like you said, he didn't, nothing last year. He's on the practice squad as of Saturday. He gets called up for Sunday's game, and he's the number one receiver. And now we're talking about, based off that one game where I think he had like 6-7 catches, based off that one game. Now we're looking at him. Oh, he could be the guy. He has to be on. He's basically a must pick up for fantasy owners this week if you can get him. But it's interesting because we were only going off one game, so he's going to have to show and prove. He's, like I said, he's worth picking up. Just in case, he's worth picking up to see, what he can do on a consistent basis. But he's going to really have to show us.
Yeah, I mean, he was looking at Dan Shonka's scouting guide when he was drafted. First team All-American as a sophomore. All right. He was a finalist for the Fred Biletnikoff Award. He had 10 100-yard receiving games in 2014. He's the all-time Rams leader in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. That's a lot of productivity for a player that also here. The silky smooth receiver lived up to his great hands moniker by dropping only 2% of his targets, the second lowest drop rate of any receiver. So that's some skills.
I mean, based on that, from Shonka, I think I'm going to go pick him up right now if he's available.
Yeah, the only thing is you got a rookie quarterback. That's all. But
right.
Hey, if Britt doesn't, and don't they have that other guy that's doing pretty well too, the tight end, DeValve?
Yeah, DeValve has been solid. Yeah, he's a tight end to keep an eye on. I don't know if he's a must pick up yet.
Yeah.
Tight end is a kind of position where you can pretty much find a decent one almost at any point. But yeah, definitely keep your eye on him.
All right. So Friday morning, we will have our fantasy show. Are we back to 10 o'clock?
I would love to be at 11. We'll see.
Yeah, let Dan know. Who picked that time, by the way? Was it Dan?
Yeah, but I think it was based on that first week.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think it's I think we can change that.
Okay. Well, let's confirm that and then make it official as soon as you can. Get back to me. I'll post it. We'll promote it, and then maybe we'll be on the air at 11 a.m. every Friday for the hour talking fantasy football. So, how's things going in your league? In our league, 1-1 or 2-0?
I think I'm 1-1. I saw you won. I think you're 1-1. So I think we're right there, bunched together in the middle. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so we'll talk about that and everything else. Some of the things we talked about just now, and then we'll fill in the blanks. And of course, Dan will have more than enough of his opinions and thoughts as he does every week. So
yeah, no question.
And we like that because it gives
us
a chance to just sit back and let someone else talk for once. So
right,
which
no
he doesn't have a problem doing. So we're happy
right.
about that. All right, sounds good, Jamal. Appreciate it. And by next week, I think we're talking NBA Nets basketball, right?
Yeah, already. Can you believe it?
Oh, no.
It's here. It's almost here.
Well, you know what? I'm getting a little bit excited about that. So it may not be a great season, but considering where the team was, it will be interesting. Thanks, Jamal. We'll talk to you on Friday.
All right, sounds good.
All right, take care. That's Jamal Murphy. And by the way, you can follow him on Twitter at Bucketologist. And also, again, Jamal posts his reports 3 times a week at the Ourlads Ourlads.com site. And the waiver wire pickup report is out today. He'll have 2 more reports in. Usually they come in between Wednesday and Friday. And again, we have a fringe report, as I mentioned, and then he'll also have an injury report. So those are his 3 reports. He posts every week at Ourlads. He also has a report that you can read at USA Today. So, and that comes out on, I believe, Thursdays. So Jamal's doing a great job as the chief fantasy analyst over at Ourlads.com. Okay, so let's see. What else do we got? Now, tomorrow we're going to be talking NFL week number 3 with Tony Mejia. So we'll get into that tomorrow. But some of the other things that we wanted to get to today regarding the games to keep an eye on. Look, USC is going to Cal. Cal's off to a good start, beating Mississippi, winning on the road to start their season at North Carolina. New coach in Wilcox. So USC coming off an emotional win. Big point spread. Could be an interesting game. Mississippi State, Georgia. How will Mississippi State come back after the blowout against LSU? They got back-to-back. I think we talked about this last week. They had 3 really tough games in a row. And so that win against LSU, if they really thought that they were a team to be reckoned with, they knew they had to win that game because following LSU is Georgia on the road, Auburn on the road. So if they can split the next 2 weeks, go into the bye, and then the rest of their schedule, they could be a favorite in every game, except for the Alabama game, which is at home. So keep an eye on Mississippi State for real if they can split the next 2 weeks at Georgia and at Auburn. Florida and Kentucky. Mark Stoops is really doing a very underrated job at Kentucky. Okay, yeah, they finally broke off and got to a bowl last year, and you don't want to get too excited. And they got beat up in the bowl game, but they have some key players back, a lot of key players back, matter of fact, from that team last year. And he had a huge win at South Carolina. So a team that was off to a great start. They go to South Carolina, they win the game outright. And Florida, okay, they had a nice, crazy win, emotional with the hurricane and the displacement and Hail Mary at the end. And it was a crazy fourth quarter against Tennessee. But those aren't good teams. They're just not. I mean, Florida. Now, look, Florida's got key guys suspended. Now, I don't know. I'll have to check. I haven't seen it yet. Are those guys coming back this week or not? But Florida, even if those guys come back, they don't have a quarterback coming back off the suspension list. So they'll be better when they get some of these key guys back, but they still don't have a quarterback. So you know what? That game, and that's a short spread too. I mean, who would have thought that Florida would be like, I think they're like what are they, a 2-point favorite or something like that, or Kentucky? That shows you Mark Stoops doing a pretty good job. Also, Washington, Colorado rematch of the Pac-12 championship game. UCLA and Stanford. Stanford, boy, I got to tell you, I'm watching the game against San Diego State, and good running backs. We were going to talk about that today, but I'll ask Dan about that next week. Bryce Love from Stanford and Rashad Penny of San Diego State. Boy, Rashad Penny looks awfully good for the Aztecs. And that game was, I think it was late in the third, maybe? And it might have been late in the third. And Stanford, I forget what the score was, but it was a close game. It was a close game throughout. And Stanford, I think Stanford might have had Stanford was losing. Now that I'm thinking about it, because they lost the game 20-17. They were losing at that point. I think it was maybe something like 13-7, I think. And he had a 4th and 1, like about the 10-yard line. And mind you, this is Stanford, one of the programs in college football with the best offensive lines for years, and running games. Christian McCaffrey. Before that, they had some pretty good players too. And then now, of course, they have Bryce Love. And San Diego State, good team, good defense, get it. But look, Bryce Love had like 180 yards in the game for a reason. And even though San Diego State's a good defense, they're not a Pac-12 team. You're the better team. You're one of the best offensive lines and running games in football. How do you not go for it when you are losing the game and it's 4th and 1? So they kick the field goal, and that winds up potentially, of course, coming back to haunt them because they lose the game by 3. They just don't have a quarterback, and that's not changing. They ran out of luck, no pun intended, when Andrew Luck left, and then Kevin Hogan left, because Kevin Hogan did a really good job there replacing Luck. But they've got nothing there right now. So until they find a quarterback, Stanford is not going to be an elite team in the Pac-12. So that makes the UCLA game a good game. You got the elite quarterback on one side with Josh Rosen, and you've got the elite running game with Stanford on the other side. Maybe one of the better interconference matchups. Toledo from the MAC at Miami. So the Hurricanes, we haven't really seen much of the Hurricanes this year because of the storms. But Toledo had a crazy game last week, and you had to figure it was going to be against Tulsa. That game went back and forth until the very end. Toledo kicks a field goal, the clock expires, wins 54-51. And Toledo, I think right now, class of the MAC, they're going to take over for Western Michigan. They're in the same division, but they'll take over for Western Michigan. Because on the other side, Ohio just isn't. Tell you the truth, I'm not even sure. Ohio's got a game against Eastern Michigan this weekend, and I might even take Eastern Michigan. I think Eastern Michigan's got something going on now. Chris Creighton's a good coach. He wins everywhere he coaches. But it's a different division though. But the point is that Eastern Michigan, because Eastern Michigan, they're not going to beat out Toledo in that division, because especially they have to go to Toledo and play. But that's still a game where you would think, okay, Ohio, but just keep an eye on Eastern Michigan. Ohio's probably still got the edge over Miami of Ohio in that division, because there really isn't anything else. Bowling Green's no good, Buffalo's no good, Kent State's no good. That's just a bad division. Right now it is. And Miami of Ohio just couldn't get over the hump against Cincinnati. They had the lead. It looks like they're finally going to beat the Bearcats, and they couldn't. So it's a long rivalry that has been dominated by Cincinnati now for some years, and it looked like Miami of Ohio was finally going to get a win, and they could. And they've been close against Cincinnati the last few years. They've been heavy dogs the last several years, and they keep covering and covering and coming close and coming close, and then all of a sudden they're a favorite, and they can't win, and they have a lead. They gave up 18 points in the fourth quarter and lost 21-17. So, but they haven't played a conference game yet, and there's still a chance that they could end up as a better team than Ohio. But that division probably gets decided on a Thursday. I think it was a Tuesday night on October 31st on Halloween. Anyway, also games. By the way, so Toledo, Miami, like I was saying, big game. Keep an eye. That's Kareem Hunt. That's that running back that I referenced a few minutes ago. I didn't even need his name fantasy wise, but Kareem Hunt. We've talked a lot about him on this, on the Prime Sports Network with our shows over the last couple of years with Dan Shonka on the Ourlads Guide to the 2017 Draft. Talked a lot about Kareem Hunt, so he's been no surprise on this network of what he's accomplishing. And matter of fact, we even said it in the preseason. We talked about, come on, Kareem Hunt is definitely going to be the number one back at Kansas City. And the injury situation opened up the door for Hunt and was the best thing to happen to the Chiefs. We talk a lot about those situations with players that shouldn't be on the second on the depth chart. They get an injury, door opens up, they take advantage of it. Toledo still has a veteran quarterback in Logan Woodside. They've got some decent guys backing up Hunt from last year, including Terry Swanson. Cody Thompson is a top-rate receiver, so they're still going to score a ton of points as they have already this season, 37, 47, 54. Jason Candle's doing a good job so far, taking over for Matt Campbell, who looks like he's going to do a good job at Iowa State. So Toledo, do they have the defense as that Miami? Probably not. But Miami is still trying to break in a new quarterback. So that could be a closer game and maybe even an upset type game to keep an eye on. And one underrated game also to watch is Central Florida and Maryland. I've talked about Central Florida a few times already this season. I really think Central Florida is ready to break out. They have Mackenzie Milton. We've talked about him before on this network, and Scott Frost looks like he's getting ready to turn that program back around. They had that minor little 0-12 hiccup in 2015, and since then, Scott Frost took over last year, was able to immediately get him back to a bowl game, recruited Mackenzie Milton, and Milton he's got the potential to be a very dynamic quarterback. So Central Florida taking on Maryland, and that is going to be a very good game to keep an eye on. Because not only do I believe Central Florida is going to be good, but we already know what's going on with Maryland, as DJ Durkin has done a fantastic job. And they beat Texas at Texas to open the season, even though they lose their quarterback. We had a guest on talking Maryland football a couple of weeks ago, highlighting the point that they probably have a more talented freshman and Kasim Hill, the true freshman. So maybe they don't skip a beat. Now they played Towson after Texas, so we really can't tell what they got there. But look, even if Central Florida loses to Maryland, it's not going to diminish the fact that I think they're going to have a really good season, because these are two teams that are both going to play better than people thought when the season began. Okay, so that will wrap it up for the show. We're doing pretty good so far in our picks in college football. We had some more upset picks last week. By the way, we do post our picks over Prime Sports Network. But we're definitely ahead of the game on college football than the pros, but that's okay. We'll get it right in the pros. We always do. Sometimes we get off to slow starts, but college football is really where we've been more focused on anyway. But like I said, I'll start paying a little bit more attention to the pro game as far as the picks are concerned. It always has been, except last year. Last year was one of the first times that I actually did a lot better in the NFL than college. But now it's turning right back around to where it used to be for me. I just enjoy it more. More research, and it's also because there's more teams in college football, and you do the research more. there's more of an opportunity for people who, if you do, uh, if you get, it's you got 32 teams compared to whatever 130, whatever there is in college football. So the more opportunities that there are for even Vegas to screw up, the better it is for handicappers or people that actually want to make bets on games or analyze games, because there just is. It's like, they don't have like a computer system of knowing everything. Sure, they have their odds set up, and that's going to set up a certain way, and it's just a lot. To me, it's always been a lot easier to kind of break down the odds in college compared to the NFL, because there's so much more unpredictability when you have 130 teams in college football. And they're talking kids. We're talking kids that, 1 week they're playing like, they're the big men on campus, and when they are the big men on campus and they're walking around and they're getting laid, and everybody's buying them. Well, can't probably buy them anything, but you know what I'm talking about. Then sometimes it goes to their head, and the next week they don't play so well. And then you got to take a look at, like we talked about when we opened the show, guys like Lamar Jackson. I mean, especially the college game. You rush for 6 touchdowns 1 week and throw for 4, and then all of a sudden you're going to win a Heisman. That doesn't prove anything. So it's the same thing. It's like when Dan scouts a player. It's the same thing. You scout the team. You scout the competition. And for instance, like last week, we had Mississippi State in the upset. We had Purdue in the upset. And again, and we took Louisiana Tech in the upset. I just realized that as well, because they were a 6-point dog. So and when we took Purdue in the upset and Louisiana Tech in the upset, it was for the same reason, because of Jeff Brom. Okay, because Jeff Brom leaves Western Kentucky. They're now not looking anything like they were when Brom was there. So you go against them, because who's there? Stanford now? He hasn't coached before. He hasn't coached well. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't proven himself like Colts. And then you take a look at Purdue and Missouri. Barry Odom, he hasn't done anything. Replacing Pinkel, nothing. They've been very inconsistent since he's taken over the program. And here you got Brom coming over, doing a great job. So it just seemed like a logical assumption there. And as far as LSU and Mississippi State, again, Dan Mullen against Ed Orgeron. Fitzgerald against an ex-Purdue quarterback. Who would you take? Now, straight up, okay, that's one thing, but pure upset, taking them on the money line, why not? So anyway, we've done pretty well so far in college compared to the pros, but like I said, I promise you we'll catch up in the pros, and we have our picks available over at Prime Sports Network every week. And then, of course, we also will have and post our college football futures report and our NFL futures report. Of course, we have Atlanta as our top future team to win the Super Bowl, as we had since the season began. I haven't looked at the futures yet in the NFL to see how much they've dropped. They actually, believe it or not, when we took Atlanta in the preseason, we took them at 12-1. They play one game against the Bears that they almost lost, and they went up to 16-1 the next week. All right, so we took them again. So we already have Atlanta twice, once at 12-1 and once at 16-1. So I think when you clobber Green Bay, even though the Packers were banged up, I got to believe that those odds have got to be down to 10-1 or 8-1. And if they're not, I might take them again. So anyway, that's what we got in the pros. And then, of course, in college, we have Penn State and USC and Oklahoma State. And so I'm not sure what we'll do this week, but we'll post it up before the game start on Saturday and Sunday and let you know. And then we'll talk about it again each week and every week here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. So tomorrow, it's week 3 coverage of the NFL with Tony Mejia. And Tony, he has his NFL Essentials article that comes out every week over at VegasInsider.com. And Tony analyzes the games. Every one of them. We'll go over all the games. We'll update the injury reports, the trends, the odds, and I'll give my picks. Tony sometimes will give a pick or two, but that's not what he's on there for. Of course, being a handicapper, he sells his picks, so he usually keeps them to himself. But bottom line is we give you as much information as we can to let you make the final decision on what you want to do in the NFL. And that's coming up tomorrow in the afternoon and every Thursday afternoon with Tony Mejia. So we'll see you tomorrow with Tony. We'll see you Friday with Jamal on our fantasy coverage. And again, look out for our postings on the website at ourlads.com. Follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Ourlads Football Radio Network. And we also want to thank Dan Shonka, as always, GM and National Scout of Ourlads, for joining us, and Jamal Murphy, our Chief Fantasy Analyst, for joining us as well. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow for more Ourlads Football Network coverage. And one more thing, don't forget to check out the Ourlads.com website for the best NFL and college football depth charts in the business. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next Wednesday with Dan Shonka once again, and every Wednesday throughout the season here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network.